afternoon, y'all.
Afternoon.
I am Albert W. McCorkle. I was born November 1st, 1847, and died October 10th, 1880. My father was John W. McCorkle, a native of Pennsylvania, who moved here from Pennsylvania and married my mother, Maria Sutherland. They had 5 kids, me, Joseph, John, Polly, and Martha. Dad died in 1879. My mom died the same day I died. I lived on a farm in this area till I was 14. Then I went to town to earn my fortune. At 18, I had to become head of the family because my parents' ill health and the flagging financial health of the family. So I became a contractor where I built levees, dikes, public works projects, things of the sort. I married my lovely bride, Mary L. True. Here, she hails from Shelbyville. And we had 2 kids. One, a son who died in infancy, and a daughter, Elizabeth, who we called Lisa. Now, Lisa's life kind of started out kind of rough because at a very young age, when I was killed, my wife died a month later. So there was a family called Horst who raised her. They're an aunt and uncle. But her life turned out to be pretty good. She inherited the family fortune, and she ended up married a Joseph Ches, a big banker. They moved back to Ogden, Utah, and by all accounts, she was quite happy with lots of kids and lots of money. So in 1876, I was elected sheriff of this town. I was also, while I was sheriff, I was the fire chief of the volunteer fire department. I was treasurer of the local Democrat Central Committee. I was a founding member of the Red Man Lodge. And additionally, I co-owned the Democrat, a now defunct newspaper, owned by George Ray and me. I was called upon to maintain peace in this town. At the time, it was really rough and tumble. There was various factions of Democrats and Republicans. Back then, the political parties held sway. They held a whole lot of power, a lot more than they do today. And the warring families, different names. I can give you 3 examples of just how bad it was. In the primary of 1877, I was called upon to break up the fight, and it was between the McVeigh brothers and Stoddard brothers. There was lots of gunplay and knives and profanity, but they all went to jail and served time. My most famous, or infamous if you want to put it, was the Battle of Smithfield, when they sent me out to arrest and pick up Charles Babe Hawkins. Me and my 6 deputies went out to arrest him. I banged on the door and asked for him to come out. I was met with a hail of bullets and profanities from the father. I kicked in the door, and unfortunately a shot came through the door and caught my deputy in the arm and busted up his arm pretty bad. Well, there was about a 30-minute gun battle, and somehow during the lull between everybody reloading, Babe got away. He didn't get away for long. He had just ran to another county. He got re-arrested in another county, and they brought him back here. Charles, his dad, Daniel, his brother, and Babe himself were arrested. Charges were never preferred, and they just got away free. However, the long arm of the law did eventually get Babe, because if anybody remembers the great lynching of 1891, it was April 22nd, 1891. Babe Charles Hawkins was in the Shelby County Jail. Angry mob pulled him out of the building and lynched him right there on the spot. Justice is slow sometimes, but it does catch up to you. And I guess you reap what you sow. But my last incident was the one in which I was killed. It was the general election of 1880, it was October 9th. The town was just full of spirits, booze, hate. There'd been like 50 fights and brawls throughout the town that whole day. General Benjamin Harrison had come to town to stir up support for his Senate seat and Republicans. So I was called to the Hardbeck Saloon, which was on Broadway and Harrison, to break up a fight between the bartender and one Ed Kennedy. So me and 4 deputies went in and pulled Ed Kennedy and his brother Gibb out, because they were the one instigators of the fight. We pulled them out into the alley. When I turned Ed Kennedy loose, he turned around and shot me point blank at the chest. I died the next day, about 8:45 thereabouts. Mr. Kennedy, Ed, he did escape justice for 3 years. Obviously, conscience caught up to him because he came back to town, and on January 9th of 1884, he ended up serving time in the penitentiary, 2 years for manslaughter. And I guess my funeral was a big one. I mean, thousands of people came. Thomas Hendricks, the former governor, came and visited. And but my funeral was delayed for about 4 or 5 hours because there was a horrendously huge fire downtown Shelbyville at a sawmill plant downtown. All the buildings back then were all wood, and the embers were threatening to burn the rest of town down. So it was like 4 or 5 hours before I finally got to the graveyard and buried me. So then yeah, after they buried me there. So that so there's parallels between my 1880s, 1850s, and today are striking as far as I'm concerned. Because I find it odd that there's just the same amount of bloodshed and lawlessness and lack of disregard for your fellow man back then as there is today. Oh, by the way, I'm going to explain this. My family dug me up and 4 or 5 family members pretty soon after we died. I'm not sure which one did it. And we were all reburied on an unmarked grave somewhere in the cemetery. The family was worried about vandalism to the grave. It was originally buried in the old city cemetery in Penn Street, and they moved us here on an unmarked grave for security reasons.
It's interesting.